We here at Uninterrupted are very excited to announce our brand new sponsor, the United Nations.
United there, United Nations.
The United Nations is a fantastic, fantastic product. Now you might be thinking, the United Nations, all they're good for is undermining national sovereignty. Not true. They also run some of the world's most successful child pedophilia rings. It's true. So you might think, hey, what do I need the United Nations for? Well, exactly. So you might be thinking, how do I get this fantastic product, the United Nations, that I love so much? Too bad, you're already subscribed. Ha 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 ha. They made us read that. So again, the United Nations is a fantastic product and everyone should love. And as the United Nations grand slogan goes, hey, whatever happens, let's just blame the Jews.
United there, United Nations.
In a world gone mad, only one man, okay, maybe more, had the courage to ramble on incoherently. The show is up and the reviews are in. This is the show that many people have described as good. Uninterrupted, Wednesday nights on Tag TV. We're good? Okay. Welcome everyone to a special episode of Uninterrupted where everything is basically our top story. Our top story will be Trudeau's attack on the media, followed by our other top story, which is the world's attack on me, right? Because as we all know, the center of the universe, me, was deplatformed and then replatformed, and now giving two talks, we'll talk all about that. Our other top story is industry is fleeing the West because Trudeau's election is a disaster for people who believe in economics, or Canadians affected by economic reality. Last I checked, that's about 37 million of them. Other than that, the other 0 Canadians are completely fine. Although the West is the most screwed. So I'll get into that. I'll also tell you about the man you can't criticize. How did I get so banned from a place? Also, Trump kills Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. Woohoo! We'll talk about the effects of the death of the ISIS leader. Is there a foreign policy in place now? Does anyone know what it is? Do I know what it is? Does Trump know what it is? Does ISIS know? Does Turkey know? Who knows? No one knows. Then, we're going to get into I'm going to start a new hashtag movement, but generally, harassing a bunch of Hindus during Diwali is considered not nice, maybe even racist. But it's socially acceptable if you fit into one specific category, and you can all guess what that is. So, let us get started. The top story in all of Canada, because if we were concerned at all about Canadian values or the direction our country is heading, or things like democracy and free speech and freedom of press, would be the destruction of the freedom of press in Canada. However, not one single mainstream reliable news source has reported on it. And why is that? Could it have anything to do with the $595 million they get paid to toe the line? I think so. So, last week in our election breakdown episode, one of the things I said would be the main focus for this government going forward, I identified that they really need to quell Western alienation with pipelines, but the other thing I said, as sort of what we can expect from this next government, on Wednesday, I said we can expect major attacks on the media in an attempt to monopolize the news. And I didn't think I'd be proven right on Friday. I thought I would cut out that video sometime in like November or late December and be like, look, I said this a couple months ago that they were going to do this within the next year. Look how smart I am. Everyone follow me. Turns out it was 2 days. I predicted it 2 days before it happened. It was literally the first thing. He's like, you know what should I do? Yeah, sue Rebel and True North Media. That's what I'll do. That's what I will do with my time. So let's just bring this up. So here's some legal documents. I'm going to show this. This is legal documents being served against Rebel Media. Right there. Right? So, okay, I'm not making this up. And, okay, what's this all about? And when we say what it's really about, you're going to go like, huh, whatever, and then we're going to explain what it's actually about. So If you remember the campaign, Trudeau was blocking journalists he didn't like from covering on his events. Andrew Lawton, who is this is True North, by the way. Andrew Lawton, verified journalist by many different political parties. He's a verified journalist in the UK. He was covering the Tommy Robinson stuff. So he's international accreditation, local accreditation. It's very hard to say Andrew Lawton isn't an accredited journalist. Who said that? The Justin Trudeau-led Liberals did, right? They banned him. RCMP was literally falling around, removing him from events, and no one was covering it. Finally, you got some press in the National Post. They wrote an article here or there about it. Okay, they did their little thing. Then True North and Rebel filed an emergency injunction against the government to let them cover the debates because I thought this was America or Canada. I thought this was a free country. I thought. They were under the impression it's a free country. I was under the impression it was a free country. The only people not under the impression this is a free country were Justin Trudeau. Can anyone think of a basic dictatorship he admires for their basic dictatorshipness? Escapes my mind. I'm sure that's all fake news. Now, the Rebel and True North won. They got an emergency injunction filed, and they were allowed to cover the debates. Victory! Huzzah! But now, after the debates, after the election, the Trudeau government is taking them back to court to reverse this injunction and ruling about them. And you might say, okay, wait, what? What is the Trudeau government hoping to do? What? Get the ruling overturned so that they can then retroactively go back in time and stop them from covering the debates? How does it matter? Didn't they already win? Like, what would be the point of this? What is the point of this? The answer is lawfare. So we've talked about this in many different aspects, but this is the Operation Kill Switch thing, where Tom Quiggin exposed the fact that the Liberal government was sending tens of millions, maybe hundreds of millions of dollars of your taxpayer dollars through Islamic Relief to Islamic Relief Worldwide, which gives money to Hamas, a terrorist organization. That's a no. You can't do that. Used government documents, internal documents from IRC and IRW, other government documents, financial documents, put no opinion and just published the documents, the own internal documents. He was then sued by Islamic Relief Canada, right? This is lawfare because Islamic Relief Canada has tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars coming out the wazoo from who knows where. And they can then use these millions as a war chest to file frivolous lawsuits against people who criticize them. And the point isn't to win these lawsuits. The point is actually to take them as far as you can, then drop them. The reason you do this is lawfare. You bleed, if you have more money and resources, you bleed your opponents dry and scare other people from talking about these issues by filing frivolous lawsuits. So you essentially sue Tom Quiggin, and then he'd be less likely to talk about these issues further, or no one else would expose Islamic Relief Canada. Hi guys, I know you're watching. Now, by the way, I appreciate the support. Thank you, Islamic Relief Canada and Islamic Relief Worldwide, for watching all these episodes. Your support has meant a lot to me over the last couple of years. I do my best to keep you guys entertained. Now, that's one type of lawfare. The other type is the Canadian government going after media sources. So there's two major stories here. One is, holy fuck, what the hell? The government's attacking the media? What? Red alert, red alert, red alert. Can you imagine if Trump did this? Could you imagine if Trump filed a lawsuit against CNN and the American government was in a war against CNN, saying CNN isn't real news? But what if Donald Trump actually filed claims against CNN saying they're fake news and not allowed into any press briefings to do with the American government? Could you imagine? Could you imagine? The CBC would have a side. It would be literally red alert. Near. Western civilization's going down. And I'd be screaming too. And I would take the side of CNN there. But the reverse has to be true when it happens in your own country. But the other main story is, where is the Canadian media on this? Where are they? Do they have any shred of credibility left? And this is the answer. No, they don't. The mainstream media, the National Post, the Globe and Mail, the Toronto Star, Global News, CTV News, CBC News are dead. They are not news anymore. They are propaganda outlets. They are not news. They are mainstream propaganda outlets paid for by Trudeau. And the reason I say this is because they are paid for by Trudeau. In the last budget, we learned that there would be $595 million allocated to bail out the media for literally what Justin Trudeau said was to preserve the independence of the media. Let's just back up on that point for 1 second. We're going to nationalize the media to preserve the independence of the media. Justin Trudeau. Remember, when you kill your enemies, they win. So, any Canadian, any Westerner should be level 10 furious that this is happening right now. Again, I have my problems with rebel media. That's why I'm not there right now, okay? Sometimes I think they do fine news. Sometimes I think they go way over the board and they get a bit silly. But they do have the right to freedom of speech. They do have the right to freedom of press. True North, on the other hand, I have very little problems with. Again, I have no problems with True North media. They're right-wing, but they're pretty open about it. They're pretty openly conservative. So again, I can't criticize someone for doing that. There's literally no problem with them. But they're under the same attacks. The exact same attacks. Same legal battle. And this is lawfare. And this is why I'm gonna be open and honest with my associations with this group and this charity. There is a charity that I am on the board of, so I'm not speaking on behalf of them now, I'm just being transparent, called Canadians for the Rule of Law. We are a lawfare project or a counter lawfare project. We started this organization last year. It was started not by me, but by others, and they brought me on to specifically fight these battles, because we saw the writing on the wall where Canada was going on a lot of these things. There's the American Lawfare Project run by Brooke Goldstein, who is fantastic. I spoke with her on Monday. Great event. Someone videoed on the page. I'll get more out on it later. It's a terrific, terrific organization. Does great work. But this is the new frontier. It's lawfare, and it's against extremist groups, and now against another extremist group called the Liberal Party of Canada. Yes, I'm going to outright say that. There is an extremist group in Canada called the Liberal Party of Canada, and their leader is a man called Justin Trudeau, subtext, Von Omar Carter. I mean, what else is there to say? I mean, this is why I have to do this, right? Because the media is dying, and they're going after literally anyone who takes an opposition against them. And there's reasons I've learned that I have to be independent, because we're going to learn later, due to the people I criticize, that I can't really be on a mainstream broadcast. So I just want to thank you everyone so much for who's donated to the Patreon recently, helping me get this show, keep it independent, because I'm going to want to go after the type of extremist groups that are conducting lawfare and trying to destroy the rights of everyday citizens, whether it be Tom Quiggin through Islamist lawfare, or whether it be the extremist Liberal Party of Canada, which is taking away the right to freedom of expression. Everyone who's donated to the Patreon so far, thank you so much for helping me keep this independent and get everyone out there the news. And if you want to support the show, please do that, because I want to be able to do this every night. Because again, there's so many top stories today that I wish we had. I wish we had an entire week to go over this. So thank you so much. All right. That's Bad News Bears. Media's done. It's bought and paid for. It's now propaganda. It's over. The second biggest story is the West is screwed. Western Canada is screwed. Sorry. Like, I listen, I get it. I know why the Wexit movement is taking off. It's because you're screwed. It's because the government hates you. It does. The Liberal government hates Alberta. It has had anti-Alberta policies. And this is the number one reason why. I know I had my problems with Andrew Scheer too, okay? I have a lot of problems with Andrew Scheer. I want him out. I want him to go away. I want someone new in the Conservative Party. But the main reason why I couldn't, follow my heart and let's PPC it, the main reason why I felt we had to vote Conservative in the last election was for this specific reason, okay? If a Liberal government would get back in, or if there's an NDP coalition, it would destroy the lives of everyday Canadians, especially those in Alberta. And I just couldn't, I felt that was a more important principle of the economic well-being and prosperity of Canada. So let's just show some of what's going on. This is indicative. You hear stories like this. Husky Energy lays off massive layoffs downtown Calgary. This is October 22nd, by the way. I chose this one because it's October 22nd, the day after the election, okay? The day after the election, energy companies and employers in Alberta said, oh, Liberals won? Yeah, we're out. Can't do it. Sorry, it's not profitable. We can't make money here. I'm sorry. We're gone. There's been 150,000 job loss in Alberta, and no one cares about it, right? There's 4,000 jobs that weren't in trouble in Quebec but are now saved because of SNC-Lavalin. And SNC-Lavalin stock goes up, right? SNC-Lavalin stock goes up majorly after the election because the Bloc and the Liberals are in power. They have a majority to block any investigation to SNC-Lavalin. There's going to be no investigation to SNC-Lavalin. That story's done. The Liberals won. The Liberals won. The Bloc won. We're not going to get justice. There will be no justice in Canada for that. They will get away with that crime. Their stock goes up. More money will flow into Quebec. Government money will flow into Quebec. Quebec will make money. Alberta will be hammered, lose money. And then while it is down, it will be kicked by the federal government. We will steal billions of dollars from Alberta and give it to prosperous Quebec. And then people will sneer at Alberta. As I said, I was watching the CBC, and a Quebec NDPer had the gall to say the reason why Alberta is in financial trouble is not because of the policies against them, not because of Bill C-69 or C-48. It's because they had no sales tax. That's what it was. Yeah, no sales tax. That's the reason Alberta is doing so poorly right now. It's not the fact that Bill C-69 makes it impossible to start new energy projects or new pipelines there. And when there's no chance of new projects or getting the energy to the ground, energy companies are just going to leave, like TMX did. And then the taxpayers have to buy that pipeline. And the Trans Mountain expansion needs to get built, but it's like the last of the Mohicans there. It's the last pipeline that's getting built under Trudeau. Other than that, the industry is they're gonna kill it. And not only will they try and kill it, they won't even have the gall to give equalization payments to Alberta while they kick it when it's down. They'll make them pay more and give the money to Quebec while it's prosperous, but Quebec dumps its stuff into the river. And Canadians will sneer, and you'll see people in the CBC saying, oh, well, Alberta's just not in line with the rest of Canada on these issues. Really, it's Alberta's fault. They're not in line with Canada. Oh, really? Alberta isn't in line with the Canadian government's policy to destroy Alberta? How dare they? How dare Alberta and Saskatchewan not like the anti-Alberta and Saskatchewan policies of the federal government? How dare they? Barbarians, really, Charles. Barbarians. Don't they appreciate what we do for them? Now give us more money, Alberta, you silly poor people. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely insane. And again, this is the case for why you needed to vote for the Conservatives to get out Justin Trudeau. It's people suffer under governments that don't recognize economic reality. The Bloc and the Quebec, the Bloc and the NDP are even worse than the Liberals in this. And now they hold the balance of power in this government. So when companies see this, you're seeing massive job loss in Alberta just because of speculation. There are things, people holding on. There are some people, again, they lost 150,000 jobs. And no one made us think about it in Eastern Canada. And now we're pretending, oh, they want to separate, they're rednecks. No, they just don't want to see their economy destroyed. Everyone should watch the Vivian Krause documentary, Over the Barrel. There will be a link to it if you're watching it as a cutout video later. There's a link to it down below. If you're watching on YouTube, link to it down below. I'm going to actually post it on the page list. It should be required viewing in any high school civics class. It really, I mean, I would say this, the anti-pipeline, the environmentalist movement in Canada is paid for by American oil companies. The Rockefeller Group and the Tides Foundation, it's the Rockefellers and the Soros, they're the ones funding most of this. They're funding most of these projects. It's American oil companies are killing Canadian industry so they could then get our oil at discounted prices. And the problem isn't that the Americans aren't getting our oil. It's the problem is we don't have pipelines to get it to Tidewater or into the States to get it to market elsewhere. That means the Americans are literally the only ones that can buy our oil, so they have us in a vice because they're the only buyers, right? Supply demand. So we're getting screwed. We're selling it below cost. We're losing money on this. And we have Bill C-69, which blocks new energy projects. And we have Bill C-48, which is not a tanker ban as they're promoting it. It's an export ban. Things can still come in. We can still import Saudi Arabian oil. We just can't export oil. To save the trees, the great bare forest. It's all bullshit. And it's killing people in our country. And why does Alberta and Saskatchewan want to separate? Because our government hates them and is trying to destroy them. If you want Alberta and Saskatchewan to stay, which I do, no one wants to see Western separation less than me, as someone who gets their point and is in the East. We have to understand two things. Western Canadian interests are really Canada's interests. If we had a thriving Alberta and Saskatchewan, it would be much better for the rest of Canada. All our economies, a rising tide lifts all ships. Two, we need to make them happier. We need to get these anti-energy policies out of our government. We need to actually expose who's doing this. We need to stand our conservative values. And three, we need to restructure equalization. We cannot keep sending half of equalization to Quebec. Okay, I'm sorry, Quebec's doing fine, and I'm sorry if they're organized crime and politicians and mafia if they lose money on this, but sorry, You've gotten over half the equalization total over the last, century and a half. You're done. We can't keep doing this if we want to keep Alberta and Saskatchewan, which, if they left Canada, within 10 years, if it's more liberal policies, they'd be in a better position. Like the page, subscribe to the page, please like the video, share all the videos, donate to the Patreon if you want to keep this independent journalism going. Okay. Our next story is an interesting story from the Liberals. The Liberals have made a special voting guide for whom? Muslims. Now, I have a lot of problems with this. One, you don't see a special voting guide for Christians, Hindus, Jews, Sikhs, and you shouldn't. You really shouldn't. This is what the government paid for. So here we have the Canadian Muslim Voting Guide, Federal Elections 2019, prepared by Canadian Islamophobia Industry Research Project. This is paid for the government, and this is a Laurier University. Now, I'm just going to stop. Everyone, we're going to stop on this one point. Everyone, stop, drop, shut them down, and then open up shop right here. Many people have said that there is something called an Islamophobia industry in Canada. This is an industry that creates fake Islamophobic claims, like our hijab hoax, right? And they use claims of fake Islamophobia to manufacture policies. It's an Islamophobia industry. Diane Weber-Betterman came on this show to talk about it. There's a video on there. We talked about the concept that, is there an Islamophobia industry? Now, the Canadian Islamophobia industry, real title, creates this voting guide for Muslims. Now, this is not, they did not poll Canadian Muslims, and I'm really sorry to Canadian Muslims who are subjected to this voting guide, because it is ridiculous. Now this, before we go, I just want to say, show who's behind this. This is Jasmine Zine. This is the sociology and Muslim studies professor at Laurier University who is behind all this. And I want full transparency here. I know who this is, and I've known who this is for over a year now, okay? The group I mentioned before, our legal conference, CTF, Canadians for the Rule of Law, we had a conference that was talking about lawfare and these things, and it talked about the different types of extremism and how to combat them in Canada. We had right-wing extremism, left-wing extremism, and Islamist extremism. Those three things the conference was dedicated to, okay? Left, right, Islamic extremism. An anti-extremist conference. Now, it was shut down from its original venue, which was Beth Tikva, which we'll get to a bit later. And then at the conference, Jasmine Zine showed up and decided to make a scene. She basically made a bunch of stuff about Christine Douglas Williams at a thing. She made a big thing. She wouldn't give her the microphone at one of the events. She was making a whole scene, and then she was escorted out by security, and then she called the cops and pretended she was assaulted at the event. Okay, she was there as a plant. She came to sabotage. Then she wrote up an article about, Islamophobia, whatever. Basically, this fake Islamophobia industry, it's Jasmine Zine. If I had to name it before I knew this was even a thing, I'd say, oh, Jasmine Zine's part of the Islamophobia industry. Then she started the Canadian Islamophobia Industry Research Project. So, thanks, Dad. So this person is a radical. All right, so just letting you know that I know she's a radical. She is not a centrist person. She is clearly a radical. This is the person the government tasked with creating a voting guide for the Muslim community. Okay, so let's show some of the things that are on the voting guide for Muslims. It has key issues. So you can see this key issues tab. I'm just going to read it for you. So the key issues, these are the top issues that they graded for Canadian Muslims. 1, alt-right groups in Islamophobia. M103, religious dress and freedom in Quebec. Immigration and refugees. Boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement. Interesting. And foreign policy. Okay. A lot of things to get to here. And then it grades all the parties on a pass, fail, or needs improvement scale. A couple of interesting things. So immigration and refugee. Justin Trudeau, as you can see, gets a passing grade. Andrew Scheer, who said he's fine with Justin Trudeau's policy, basically said, yeah, I'm too scared to say anything else. I agree with Justin Trudeau. Him agreeing with Justin Trudeau was a fail. Bias much? So again, this is paid for by Liberal tax dollars. Liberals use tax dollars to create a voting guide from a obviously far-left individual who clearly is biased in her assessment of Andrew Scheer, who got fails all around. And one needs improvement on religious freedom and Bill 21 in Quebec. So I can get the Bill 21, and I can get some of this stuff, alt-right and Islamophobia. Okay, how do the groups in Islamophobia? Okay, fine. But boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement, BDS. So this is the campaign to destroy Israel. Omar Baghdadi, the people behind BDS openly say that their goal is not peace, it is to destroy Israel. Now, Here's another thing about BDS, boycott, divested, sanctions. Now that's a funny acronym, but what it really stands for is illegal commercial discrimination against Israelis, because that's what it is. It's commercial discrimination against Israeli products. Now, there are two ways to argue this. There is the, what we'll say, more generally left-wing accepted principle, and a lot of conservatives have this principle in Canada, that there should be anti-discrimination policies. By anti-discrimination means, like, when you go into a store in Canada cannot put on the window, we do not serve black people, we do not serve Chinese people, right? You can't do that. You can't discriminate on race, religion, sexuality, ethnicity. There's a lot of things, and nationality is one of those people you can't discriminate at. So I cannot open a store and say, no Mexicans allowed. BDS is putting products on the thing saying, no Israelis allowed, right? It's discrimination, it's commercial discrimination against Israelis. It's not legal in Canada. Now, if BDS wanted to make the complete libertarian argument that there should be no anti-discrimination laws, and then you could boycott who you want, then BDS would be legal in Canada. But the reason why BDS is illegal in Canada is because it's commercial discrimination. Now, if you want to say BDS should be legal because I believe in free speech or whatever, then you also have to say that I should be able to put a sign on my door saying no black people allowed, because it's the exact same thing under commercial law. But there's another element to this too, which is, okay, BDS is clearly anti-Semitic because it singles out Israel, and the number one proponent of this is Ilhan Omar, the congresswoman, who just came out, had a speech about sanctions against Turkey are bad and we shouldn't sanction Turkey. But she's also a BDS supporter, right? Sanctions are bad, they don't work, we shouldn't put them on Iran or Turkey. But I'm in favor of BDS. Again, what does that stand for? Sanctions on Israel. So this is, there have been studies from the Amica Institute. Just a recent study came out, shows that there is a 70% increase of anti-Israel inspired anti-Semitism on college campuses, and they identified the key factor behind it was the BDS movement, and there's actually a 42% decline in classical anti-Semitism attacks. Now, what this means is people are attacking Jews at a more frequent rate on college campuses. I know, the alt-right college campuses. Except when people attack Jews nowadays, they do not yell, dirty Jew, and Jews control the world. They yell, dirty Zionist, Israel controls the world. Right? So that's what's happening now. The attacks are being as Israel-based anti-Semitism. So the BDS movement is designed to essentially destroy Israel. And what this government document is saying is the Canadian government is saying, you know what's more important to Muslim Canadians? What's more important to Muslim Canadians is anti-Semitism. Muslim Canadians care more about propagating anti-Semitism or destroying Israel. Maybe you just want to, you're not anti-Semitic, you just want to destroy Israel. Okay, fine. Let's say Canadian Muslims want to destroy Israel more than they care about healthcare, education, and the economy. Because healthcare, education, and the economy are not on this voting guide for Muslims. Now, I'm going to say personally, I think that's preposterous. I think you can easily say over 95% of Muslims in Canada, their top priorities, in their top 6 are definitely the economy, education, and healthcare. Okay, I think the majority of Muslims, it is my personal view, that the majority of Muslims really care about having a job to provide food for their family, want to make sure their kids can go to a school where they can learn that 1 + 3 is 4. They want their parents to be able to be taken care of in a good hospital. I think those are very big among the list of concerns for Canadian Muslims. Who does not think this? Jasmine Zine doesn't think this. The Liberal government doesn't think this. Now, let's just do a bit of a thought experiment here. Let's say me or you are at a town hall with Justin Trudeau, and we get up and we say, Justin Trudeau, according to government research, apparently Canadian Muslims care more about destroying Israel than they do about the health of the Canadian economy, education sector, or healthcare. What do you think would happen? Everyone would go, oh! Justin Trudeau would go, oh boy, and ramp up for one of his diversity is our strength, you're a bad person speeches, and the media would say, Islamophobe gets up and says this about Muslims. Right? If you were to say Canadian Muslims care more about destroying Israel than they do about the economy, healthcare, education, you'd be labeled Islamophobic. Yet, the Canadian Islamophobia Research Project, or whatever it's called, explicitly states, you know what's more important to Muslims in Canada? Destroying Israel. Healthcare, economy, the concerns of you and yours, they don't care. And, okay, so we have a couple things. Why are we creating a special government-funded Muslim voting guide? I get it if a Muslim organization says, hey, we're putting out a voting guide for Muslims who follow us. Here are the issues we think are important, and we've graded the politicians on this. Okay, as long as you receive no federal dollars and you're not a registered charity for doing that, or because charities can't get political, as long as you don't receive federal funding, you're not a charity, I have no problem with this. Free speech. You know, I would put out I'll put out a voting guide for Muslim Canadians. It says, don't vote for Trudeau, he'll destroy the country. There you go. Muslims, Canadians, don't vote for Trudeau, he'll destroy the country. Jagmeet Singh, same. Elizabeth May, crazy tree lady, don't do it. Drunk Uncle Lizzie, deport her. To where? I don't care. Tree land. Whatever. Right? There's Daniel's Muslim voting guide. By the way, I also have a Sikh guide, a Jew guide, a Hindu guide, a Christian guide, an atheist guide, a black guide, white guide, and it also goes, don't vote for Trudeau, I think he's a putz. Okay? But I didn't receive any federal dollars for that. I'm not a registered charity. That's freedom of speech. The Canadian government paid for this nonsense, and it clearly violates some form of federal law. You clearly can't do this. Paid a radical to do this. It's biased, and the other thing is, we have to acknowledge that anti-Muslim bigotry is real, okay? Now, I understand. I talk a lot about the Muslim Brotherhood and Islamist extremism, and we have to parse these two things out. We really do. We have to parse Islamists versus everyday Muslims. We really have to do that. And Muslims do suffer from the actions of Islamists, and we can go on and on about this. But there is a, we'll say, prevailing stereotype that negatively affects Muslims, that Muslims are here to create a voting bloc, an ethnic voting bloc, to impose either Sharia law or Muslim values on Canada. Do you think it is good optics to then create a voting guide federally funded for Muslims that portrays Muslims at a voting bloc that doesn't really care about the top issues in Canada? Do you think that's wise? Again, according to this government-funded research, Canadian Muslims care more about destroying Israel than they do about the economy, healthcare, education. Now, I want to reiterate, Muslim Canadians were not actually polled. This does not represent any real hard data on the Canadian Muslim community. It is much more likely that 95% or more Muslims in Canada care about the economy, education, and healthcare than they do about this nonsense. But that's not what you're going to learn from the Canadian government, who's just so good at playing people against each other, just pitting the Jews against the Muslims, the East against the West. That's what Trudeau's legacy is going to be. Okay, what a lovely use of your tax dollars. Now, to the most important story in the entire world. Headlines from Bahrain to Venezuela, back to France, have been saying Daniel Bordman was deplatformed and then replatformed. So let's get into this story. Some of you may know by now, I was scheduled to give a talk on December 10th at Beth Tikva Synagogue, the same synagogue that the Anti-Hate Network bullied to get the conference I was talking about before shut down. They succeeded and it happened somewhere else. Now they came from me because I was scheduled to give a talk, and this talk was centering on the similarities between the issues in Kashmir and the issues in Israel, right? How media malpractice. I was going to explain how, basically the title of the talk is going to be, at Beth Tikva now, why the media will never support Israel. Talk for all Jews, I can fast forward. The first part of the talk will be, I can't hear you, speak louder. The second part of the talk will be, you're speaking too fast. Third talk, here's a okay, there you go. You come. Now, I'm going to be hosting a talk on Sunday, December 10th, on a very similar topic, Israel and Kashmir, but more on Canadian media and who's attacking Canadian values and the fight for freedom. That talk will be on December 8th. That will be at the Toronto Zionist Centre, which is near Lawrence West Station. It also has free parking. There's a parking lot. So you should be able to come. I welcome you all there, 7 p.m., December 8th. Okay, so how did this all happen? So let's show the email that was sent to, so if you cannot read this, I will read this to you. This is from a member of the idiot community. This is from Useful Idiot number 1. He sent this to the rabbi. Rabbi, I am a Bayit member and officer. I'm also actively engaged in the Jewish-Muslim dialogue as an individual through Shalom Hartman Institute. I see that Daniel Bordman, that's me, is on your agenda December 10th. Not sure if you've seen his videos online, but a lot of it leans far right and highly anti-Islam. On one recent video, he aligned my good friend, we'll get back to this, Mohammed Hashim, with the Muslim Brotherhood. An outright lie. Bordman may very well be entertaining. Really, you think so? Gee, thanks. To a point. Oh well. No doubt he is more suited to a JDL meeting than an esteemed congregation. Sija recently condemned him in a not-so-subtle tweet. Please vet him yourself. I bet you'll agree and cancel his scheduled appointment. Thanks, Useful Idiot. Okay. So I'm just going to bring up the Sija tweet for a second. So this is the tweet that condemned me outright. Sija, we abhor the violent language on social media targeting Sufi's restaurant in Muhammad Hashem after the reopening of the establishment. We have seen far too often online words can lead to real-world violence. There's no place for this in our communities. Clearly directed right at me. Now, let's just go over this again. Before we get into that, I just want to say, once the rabbi and senior members in the synagogue got involved and heard about this, there were the founding members and the board members and the rabbi all took my side, and we got this fixed. Right, I was canceled on Tuesday, uncanceled on Wednesday. So Daniel 1, Muslim Brotherhood, useful idiots, 0. So baby, I'm back. So both talks will go on. Good on you. The other thing is, we have a lot of useful idiots in our community, like JB there. Now, let's talk about a few things he says here. All right, he is a Bayit member. So he's the member of a different synagogue and officer in quotation marks. What the hell does that mean? And by the way, we called. No one likes you. They really hate you there. They want you out. You know who else hates you? And you and your other friends who from the Anti-Hate Network who got the other talk shut down? Yeah, everyone hates you, including the rabbis. We really hate you guys. Now, I'm actively engaged in the Jewish-Muslim dialogue as an individual from Sharm el-Sheikh. So we have a member from the Interfaith Brigade. And the interfaith community wants to shut down a talk between Jews and Hindus. God forbid we have a talk that brings the Jewish and Hindu communities together. Why would the interfaith community be so mad at it? And I talked about Muhammad Hashem, who I accused of being a Muslim Brotherhood operative. And there's no evidence of that. Now, do you think the Muslim Brotherhood has any interest in interfaith meetings? It's not like it's one of the key things of their organization is to infiltrate through the interfaith meetings. It's not like they say that in their internal documents to ad nauseum. No. JB's got us covered because he's good friends with Muhammad Hashem, who, again, claimed to be family friends with Danforth shooter Faisal Hussein. So maybe Jeffrey can clarify the relationship between his good friend and Faisal Hussein. Were they all good friends? Do they go out for pizza, play Xbox together? Let me know. By the way, you're totally invited. All the people who send angry messages to Beth Tikva trying to get me shut down, you all get free tickets to both talks. You're invited. Come ask me questions. See if I can prove this. Right? Now, this is going to bring us on to a very interesting topic, which is, who is Muhammad Hashem and why was I tried to shut down for just little pointing him out, little old me? So Muhammad Hashem, if you remember the Danforth shooting, he was the spin doctor, as we will see here, behind the Danforth shooting. So here we have an article from Anthony Fury. You can bring it up here. Here's Meet the Spin Doctor behind the Hussein family statement. Just a few. The man who has presented himself as the point of contact for the family of Faisal Hussein and a professional activist who reportedly committed himself to framing a new narrative of Muslims in Canada and creating a national political movement. Shortly after the Ontario Special Investigations Unit revealed the identity of Danforth shooter, 29-year-old Faisal Hussein, a news release was sent out from media attributed to the Hussein family. The Paul's statement read this. It was basically, it was his legalese statement. He is a labor organizer for York Regional Labour Council, an NDP activist. He's also been described as the driving force behind the National Council of Canadian Muslims. So the NCCM describes him as the driving force behind their operation. Okay. So I want to say, one, the video I made about Muhammad Hashem, I don't even think I cut out that video and put it out. I think it was just part of the 1-hour episode, which means the Muslim Brotherhood is watching this show with you. They're one of those people in the corner. Hello, welcome. I am so glad that I have new fans. If we have, Catherine Bullock or Sirhan Wahaj, Asim Al-Haddad, Hani Albana, all you guys watching this show really brings a tear to my eye. I am so glad you're here with us. I didn't know you were fans. Apparently, you guys find me entertaining. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. If you want to support the show, I'd be happy. You guys can donate to the Patreon. I know you get hundreds of millions of dollars from the Canadian government. I know Sarhaj, you might be a bit too busy planning more terrorist training camps with your family, but the other ones, I mean, you're getting tons of government money. Instead of sending it to Hizbul Mujahideen overseas, maybe don't give it to a terrorist group. Guys, we have such shared values. I love Canadian values. You want to destroy Canadian values. Okay, we're kind of the opposite on every single issue. But still, I'm glad you're watching. Thanks, guys, for being here. I appreciate your support. Now, the reason I brought this up, so CIJA then protects Mohammed Hashim. So he's part of the NCCM, National Council of Canadian Muslims. How are they associated with the Muslim Brothers? They are formally called CARE Canada. CARE is an unindicted co-conspirator in the Holy Land Foundation trial for terrorism funding. CARE has been called a terrorist organization by the United Arab Emirates. In Canadian Senate testimony, they identified 4 groups as being front groups of the Muslim Brotherhood. One of them is the NCCM, or Canadian National Council of Canadian Muslims. Now, so Faisal Hussein, the Danforth shooter, Mohammed Hashim, right after it was announced, there was a statement from the family. So how did he get to the family right like that? He says he's family friends with the Hussein family. Family friends. He knows them so well. So who exactly is he friends with? Is he friends with Faisal Hussein himself, the Danforth shooter? Maybe. But then that would contradict what he said in the statement of him being a depressed loner with schizophrenia. Right? Maybe you can clear that up. Maybe you're his friend. You could be, like, my best friend is schizophrenia. I'm not saying you can't be friends with people with schizophrenia. But it goes against the depressed loner type thing. Because my friend's quite extroverted. So I don't really know what you mean. And again, to the point, people with schizophrenia and people with mental illness are actually less likely to commit violent crime than the general population. So it doesn't really excuse his actions. Right? Also, you were friends with him, right? You were family friends. If you're family friends with Faisal Hussein, do you think you were ever in his room? Did you see that weapons cache he had? Mohammed Hashim, my dude. Also JP, who's good friends. You guys were playing Xbox together. Did you see that weapons cache in his room? How about when he went to Pakistan? And that trip with all those thousands of dollars of receipts? What was that about? You guys are his good friends. Let me know. Call in. Show up to my event. Clear the air. You're invited. Maybe it was a family. Maybe he wasn't friends with Faisal Hussein. Maybe he's friends with his brother. Although his brother's in a coma. Not really talking to anyone anymore. Why is he in a coma? Oh, that's right. Because he was in a room with chemical weapons, carfentanil. Enough carfentanil to kill everyone in Canada and America 3 times over. Oh, well. Passed out. He's been in a coma ever since. Now, he had some gang connections, some previous arrests. Were you running in the gang too as Mohammed? Were you in his gang? Maybe you're friends with his sister, but she's dead. So are you communicating by Ouija board? How does that work? Or are you just homies with the parents? Maybe you're just their homies. Maybe you just like hanging out with the older generation who doesn't have great English skills because they needed you to write the statement. So what is it? Guys, fill me in. You complain about JP. You're good friends with Mohammed Hashim. Mohammed Hashim's family friends with the Hussein family. Fill me in on the nature of that relationship, guys. What else is he known for? Well, according to his own statements, he was on the ground during the hijab hoax. Right? So when the hijab hoax happened, all of a sudden this girl gets to school. She's been attacked by a fictional Asian man. And all of a sudden the NCCM is on the ground there, ready for a press conference or putting a little girl on TV. And it just happened to align in January with a push the NCCM was making to recognize January 29th as a day of action on Islamophobia, which they succeeded at in a lot of ways. It just happened to be so coincidental. And this man's name is the driving force behind this organization. Oh boy. So, when I saw that Mohammed Hashim was part of the Sufis restaurant controversy, I decided to point it out because it closed, it reopened, and Mohammed Hashim was in the background. And I said, whoa, now we got to pay attention. So they accused me of violent language, which is not going to stick. Because if you watch my videos on it, when it first happened, when the Sufis kid joined Antifa and harassed the old lady outside the Maxime Bernier event, right? It was a video that went viral. He harassed Maxime Bernier, the old lady in a walker. I didn't say his name. Even though I knew he was a Syrian refugee and he has family at a restaurant, I didn't say the name, I didn't say the restaurant. Right? And I explained my reasoning saying that I do not want to be part of this feedback loop of societal destruction. I don't. Okay? I don't want to name it. We shouldn't be threatening this restaurant. It only goes into their narrative. Doing what Antifa does to Antifa, it's a way to just inflame tensions. So in no way did I ever endorse violent rhetoric. I always said, tone it down. And I'm going to explain another reason why we should not threaten Mohammed Hashim or Sufi's restaurant or any of this. Doing so, threatening Sufi's restaurant is exactly what the Muslim Brotherhood playbook wants you to do. It is what they thrive on and it is what they are there for. Because The Muslim Brotherhood and Islamist extremism, they don't care about Muslims. They don't. The number one threat to Canadian Muslims is not the BDS movement or whatever Jasmine Zine says. It is radical Islamists, because they don't care about the lives or well-being of everyday Muslims. Their goals are to create controversy, to create Islamophobia, to build the narrative that the West is against Islam and push them into conflict so they can take over. That's what they want to do. They don't care about the well-being of a single Muslim. So when I saw this, I said, hey, now that Muhammad Hashem's involved, let's pay it. I'm going to be paying attention to this, because wherever he goes, trouble tends to follow. And if we have a lot of money and influence and media and Liberal Party members and Muslim Brotherhood affiliated groups swirling around Sufi's restaurant, it's not good. And I think I know their plan here. This is speculation, but I'm saying the reason why you got Muslim Brotherhood around is they kind of want to be in there. Just so they're in there, so there's this other whispers out there. I don't think the Muslim Brotherhood brought in the Sufi family. Right? Their kids are radical leftists, not Islamists. But the reason they're jumping on is because people are going to be mad at the fact that they're part of Antifa. And this is going to inspire people to be angry. And if the Muslim Brotherhood can kind of align themselves with Antifa or whatever, it's only going to win them radical leftists. And the radical left isn't going to care. You think anyone in Antifa, if you explain what the Muslim Brotherhood is going to care, or just call you a Nazi? I mean, come on, we know this. And they'll create more controversy. They'll get a new type of hatred against Sufi's restaurant. They'll be able to say, look, they're accusing Sufi's restaurant. These nice people of being part of Muslim Brotherhood. Just look at this poor lady. She's not part of the Muslim Brotherhood, and she isn't. Right? But this is what they want. They want to then create this controversy and rally the Islamists and the leftists and everyday Muslims around this singular cause and radicalize and radicalize and radicalize to create counter-radicalism, to say, look at these innocent people and what the crazies are doing to them, to help push more people into the fringes, because the Muslim Brotherhood thrives when people go on the fringes. And they don't care who gets hurt. We're going to talk about it later, but when Omar Bakr al-Baghdadi, the leader of ISIS, died, how did he die? He took a suicide vest with him, took 3 of his kids hostage, and blew up 3 of his own children. And no one talks, people talk about it, but no one cries for those kids, and it's a shame. Because they're part of ISIS's victims too. And this is what Hamas does. They strap suicide vests on kids. They build weapons under schools, so they try and maximize casualties. Hamas says this. And ISIS says this. The Muslim Brotherhood, radical Islamist terrorists, the lives they care the least about, or the people they want dead the most, are Muslims. Because they want to point to the other Muslims and say, look at these dead Muslims. Look how dead they are. Got to join us or it's going to happen to you. And they'll keep propping up the conditions where it can happen. And sorry, but I'm not going to stay silent on this issue, because I value the lives of all Canadians. The lives and well-being of all Canadians are centered on the fact of getting the Muslim Brotherhood, Antifa, the alt-right, all these losers, all these extremists out of our politics. So the fact that they're watching just to see if I mention Muhammad Hashem, who's the driving force behind the NCCM, lets you know that the mainstream, the media, the interfaith people, whoever it is, the powers that be, the radical powers that be, and their useful idiots, they don't want you looking into what Muhammad Hashem's up to. They don't. But we're going to do it anyway. Okay, so that's our top stories. Again, there's an event on this page. If you want to come to my talk that was canceled and uncanceled, it's on the page, December 8th. I'll share the event later. Please come. If you want to support the show, please like the page, share the video. If you want to keep funding to keep me doing this independently, donate to the Patreon, because apparently, after I exposed the fact that the Conservative Party has some ISI members, in the party, I'm not allowed to play with the big boys. So if you want to keep independent media going, please support us on Patreon. That would be wonderful. And if I could do this full time, imagine if the show was every day. The Muslim Brotherhood would be gone by now. Absolutely gone. They'd be done. All right. So thank you so much to everyone who's already donated. And we're going to be moving on. ISIS is decapitated for now. Donald Trump and the American forces and a very good girl have killed Omar Bakr al-Baghdadi. Now, this is good news. He's terrorist scum. He is dead. Does it mean ISIS is done? No. Does it mean Trump had some genius plan all along? Maybe? I don't know. Who knows at this point? Who knows what Trump's foreign policy is? This is why I haven't made any foreign policy videos on Trump, because I can't figure it out. No one can figure it out. And I guarantee you the person who knows the least about Trump's foreign policy is Donald Trump right now. We're in absolute wing it mode. Now, it's good that Omar Bakr al-Baghdadi is dead. It's a big propaganda blow to the Islamic State. Again, people were joining ISIS once they had created this sort of caliphate, right? Because ISIS, the Islamic State, it's like, look, we have this Islamic State. We're going to have this global caliphate. Come join. Look, we're getting space in Iraq, right? It was a good propaganda thing, and people from the West came to join them, right? Once they lost ground, they got less recruits. One, because it's hard to recruit someone, and also they lost their propaganda luster. The death of their caliph, Omar Bakr al-Baghdadi, is another propaganda hit, right? It's sort of like, oh, he's the divine savior. No Americans can get at Baghdadi. Kaboom. So ISIS has been decapitated. There'll be violent outlashes now, but it will hurt their global recruitment. That is a good thing. Now, people are going to say a lot of crazy things about ISIS. We just have to set a few of the record things straight. Now, did America create ISIS? No, they didn't create ISIS by funneling ISIS and like creating, oh, we need to create a controversy for a war in Syria to create. No, they created ISIS through ignorance. When Obama withdrew from Iraq, he created a power vacuum. Then there was all these terrorists that had nothing to do. They had a full reign. Then when the Syrian revolution happened, Assad released some terrorists into the rebels to say, hey, look, the rebels are terrorists. They then melded with the Iraqi group, they got a lot of weapons, and they took over. And one of the reasons why you say, oh, well, ISIS has American weapons. This always happens, and this is, again, why foreign aid is really silly in times. Just dumping weapons on a poorly trained militia is the worst thing you can do, because you see this in African conflicts all the time, and in Middle Eastern conflicts all the time. Let's say I'm the American government and I say, okay, I'm going to give weapons to these group because I ideologically align with them. It sounds nice. It really does. But they're often ill-trained, and you know what? The one thing about jihadists is they know how to fight. And they're not scared of dying. ISIS are good fighters because they're not afraid of death. So what happens is the terrorists overtake these ill-trained, poorly trained people, then take their equipment for themselves. So a lot of the American stuff that's ending up in the hands of ISIS isn't because they gave it directly to ISIS. They gave it to the people who were fighting ISIS, who did a terrible job fighting ISIS, and ended up losing the equipment to ISIS. Okay, so that's why you'll see, that's how the majority of terrorist groups get their arms, is by taking them by ill-equipped rebel groups that are backed by Western powers naively. That's one of the ways to arm terrorist groups, is just through sheer stupidity. Okay, so we're going to have that. Now, what is Trump's foreign policy? I've always been a big supporter of the establishment of Kurdistan as a nation. I think the Kurds deserve it. There's two reasons. One, I think they deserve it. They've been persecuted by the Arab states their entire existence. They have been not given a fair shake in democracy. They need their own nation to represent them. If you're a nationalist, I think nationalist principles apply to Kurdistan. You should believe in Kurdish nationalism too. So I'm a believer in the establishment of Kurdistan. Two, I think the West sets a really bad precedent when we don't back our allies. So if we don't come to the aid of the Kurds, no one's going to come to our aid in the future, right? When you turn your back on the people who help you, it sets a bad thing going forward. So let's play Donald Trump super duper 3D upside down underwater mega chess. What's Donald Trump's grand scheme here? So let's propose the super genius ultimate scenario that makes me say, Donald Trump, you're the super greatest foreign policy mind of all time. Okay? Because I think a lot of foreign policy has been really good up until now. Did he let the Turks, come into Kurdistan for a bit, show that they're war criminals, show that they're Islamists, expose their true colors, and have the media and the global community turn against Turkey, who's now a Muslim Brotherhood country? Did he also, with what's happening to the Kurds, finally build an international sentiment for the Kurds? Because when it was George Bush talking about the Kurds, no one cared. No one covered it, okay? No one covered anything about Kurdistan. I know Kurdish people. I know these Kurdish protesters in Young and Dundas. I've met with them. I've signed their petitions, right? No one was talking about the establishment of Kurdistan until Donald Trump turned his back on them. So was this some genius plan to gain support for Kurdistan? So can Donald Trump create a Kurdistan? And I get a lot of Americans saying, why do we have to be there forever? Well, if you establish a Kurdish state, if you establish a Kurdistan and you're there in a transitional period, eventually, if there's a legitimate country called Kurdistan, they can build their own air force, they can build their own military, they can get their own cavalry. Once countries have air forces, people don't mess with them that much, right? The reason why Turkey's bombing the Kurds is because they don't have an air force to fight back. So they can just, it's like Italy going to Abyssinia in World War II. Like, oh, they have muskets and Italy had airplanes. Like, oh, we're winning. And then once they got faced other countries with airplanes, it's like, we're losing, run away. Right? This is sort of Turkey here. So is this some next level super move to show that the Turks are a bunch of Islamist frauds, sanction them, get them out of NATO, establish a Kurdish state that has international support? If that happens, if Kurdistan comes out of this, He did it. He defeated ISIS. He created Kurdistan. He undermined Turkey. Donald Trump. Hats off. Hats off to you, Donald Trump. No one thought it was possible. You did it in the most unconventional way possible. Foreign policy, very stable, genius. You did it. I will scream that to the rafters. I will go out and tell everyone I was wrong, I was wrong, I was wrong. He's a genius. If that happens, I'm out there on other side form. However, if this is just, hey, look, I killed a couple of ISIS leaders, then we're going to let Turkey and Syria and Iran take over, well, then you lost a chance. You had a valuable asset in the Middle East, right? You had a presence there in the Kurdistan. You had a quasi-independent Kurdistan. You had a Western ally acting as an actual buffer against extremism there. Like, the thing is, if you lose Kurdistan, you lose that buffer. Because the Iranians, they currently have a croissant they're building, right? We know Iran has Iraq under control, which is rebelling, and no one's talking about. Lebanon's rebelling, and no one's talking about. And Syria's under control, which is in the middle of civil war. So, again, I wanted to cover Iraq and Lebanon more, but there's just no time. So if all that happens, if Donald Trump can prevent that from happening, he wins. But if the Iranians and the Russians and the Turks gain power in the region and gain that croissant, you are going to create more conflict down the line, because the Gulf states and the Israelis are going to be in war within a couple of years, because that's what the Iranians do. That's what the Islamic Republic is all about. And that's what they're all about. Jihad. Okay, our final story tonight. Some of you have heard of the concept of white privilege, but you don't know about another type of privilege, which we are calling the most important privilege is angry Islamist mob privilege. Yes, angry Islamist mob privilege. This is when you get to do something that no one else would ever do and get away with it because you're an angry Islamist mob. Now, thought experiment time number 2 on the show. Let's say me and everyone else watching this show right now. Let's say we all want to go to a protest. And I said, you know what let's do? I want to protest India. And what are we going to do? Well, let's get into a mob. Let's go to where a bunch of Hindus are in Toronto on Diwali. By the way, happy Diwali, Hindus. On Diwali, let's go and protest Hindus celebrating Diwali and say we're protesting because we disagree with India's policy on farming in the south, right? We're protesting Indian agricultural policy, but we're yelling at a bunch of Hindus celebrating Diwali. What would the CBC call me? A racist. But here we are. Let's show the video. This is London. London, England. Yes, this is actually London. Here is an angry mob of Islamists protesting a bunch of Hindus on Diwali. They tried to march to Diwali, and here's an effigy of Premier Modi, which they're eviscerating and stomping on, and this is a stomping of peace. And this shows you, when angry mobs of Islamists say they're there for human rights, they're never there for human rights. Free Kashmir? That is just a veiled way of saying we hate Hindus. Oh, we're for Palestinian rights? Well, you probably hate Jews. Looks so peaceful. He looks so peaceful right now. Look how much peacing he's doing. Look how much peace. So much peace and love. That's how you do a human rights rally. That's peaceful, apparently. Now, I would get called racist if I did that. You would get called racist if you did that. But the way you are not called racist if you're part of an angry mob of Islamists with angry Islamist mob privilege. So, just to be clear, I am not advocating for anyone to go protest Hindus on Diwali. I'm just saying when people protest Hindus on Diwali, it's usually veiled for, we don't like Hindus. And this whole free Kashmir, no, it's about freeing Kashmir, Kashmir needs to be free. Okay. Do they really want an independent Kashmir, or do they want to annex Kashmir and make it part of an Islamic State of Pakistan? Because at the Pakistani consulate in Canada, Salma Atulishan, our senator, and a bunch of MPs, spoke under a banner in Urdu which said, Kashmir will become Pakistan. So it wasn't for independence. Then she claimed, oh, it's about Kashmiri independence. We are in for the independence of Kashmir, with a sign literally above her head saying, Kashmir will become Pakistan. But independence. No, they just don't like Hindus. They don't like Hindus. That's what they're up for. And I wish we could have time to talk about Ilhan Omar today. She was exposed. Okay, quick Ilhan Omar thing. Ilhan Omar talked about, again, she's against sanctions. She was the only one to vote against sanctions in Turkey, and she was also the only one, again, don't sanction Turkey. And also, here's her statement. She wouldn't even recognize the Armenian genocide. Here is, here's her statement on the Armenian genocide. Over 1 million Christian Armenians were killed by Turkey. I believe accountability for human rights violations, especially ethnic cleansing and genocide, is paramount. But accountability and recognition of genocide should not be used as a klugel in a political fight. It should be done on the basis of academic consensus outside the push and pull of geopolitics. By the way, there's literally notes the Germans took of the genocide happening. So there's an academic consensus. A true acknowledgement of historical crimes against humanity must include both the heinous genocides of the 21st century, along with earlier mass slaughters like the transatlantic slave trade, not the Arab slave trade, by the way, that one's totally fine, and the Native American genocide, which took the lives of hundreds of millions of indigenous people in this country. For this reason, I voted present on the final passage of H.R. Resolution 296, the resolution affirming the United States record on the Armenian genocide. That's right, Ilhan Omar says, we can't recognize the genocide of 1 million people by the Turkish government. We must recognize that America commits genocide. So another thing Trump did is he totally exposed this Islamist hack and fraud, because she is owned by Turkey and Qatar, and you see it now. This fake human rights sleazeball, Ilhan Omar, yeah, human rights, but Muslims don't commit genocide. No. Yeah, there's physical documentation of it, but no, America's bad. So she's a total shill. Thank you everyone for watching this. Again, if you want to go to my talk on December 8th to deal with Kashmir and Israel and Canada, we'll call it Canada, the media and the useful idiots who enable extremism. The link to that event is on the page. If you like this show, please support us on Patreon. Please share the videos. Please like the videos. Please buy Shivam, our sound guy. Please buy him a hat, a nice little warm toque, because he's so cold. He's so cold over there. All right, so someone, get him a nice thing. And I will be back here every Wednesday night, and hopefully other nights, yelling and ranting at clouds in the sky, right here on Tag TV. In a world gone mad, only one man, okay, maybe more, had the courage to ramble on incoherently. The show is up and the reviews are in. This is the show that many people have described as good. Uninterrupted. Wednesday nights on Tag TV. We're good? Okay.